In the shareholders report, it clearly stated that lower horsepower motorcycles provide a better riding experience, increased safety, and there is growing interest. Hey, how's it going? Welcome to my channel. If you haven't done it yet, do that thing down below. I recently found an article on Autocar India, dated January 20th, 2023, which was 1 week ago from now. And it was an interview of KTM CEO, Stefan Pierre, talking about some developments with KTM. How KTM was working on a Parallel Twin 690 engine because they wanted to reduce the horsepower and engine on the 790 Duke. Now in that interview, he revealed some other details regarding the 490 and also what the 690 engine would possibly look like. Now these were just little tidbits that were given, but because I found this article, I wanted to make sure that you out there were aware of this new development on a 690cc Parallel Twin that will be based on the 790 engine that CF Moto is currently making. So if this is something that interests you, stick around and we'll talk about how we've gotten to this point of a different model of motorcycle potentially coming out of KTM and how this 690 engine will likely be a cross-platform engine. In the article that I read, and I will leave links to in the description if you want to read it yourself, there's not a lot of details in it, but some good nuggets. And one of those was that KTM wants to lower the engine size in the 790 Duke to that 690 platform, reduce the horsepower. So this new engine, according to what Pierre had said, is it's going to be somewhere in the range of 70 horsepower. Now the authors of these two different articles have speculated a little bit that it's going to be 70 to 80 horsepower or 75 to 80 horsepower. So it really depends on where they take the engine and what they do with it. Now, what was said in the article is they're going to take the existing 790 engine that KTM has a lot of experience with now and reduce the size of that to meet the 690cc or whatever that ends up being size-wise. But what is easy about that is since that engine already shows up in the Duke, which is what they were looking at, it's almost a direct bolt up. So it should be pretty easy for them to reduce the size, cylinders, stroke, whatever they decide to do to make those changes. But there isn't bike platform chassis changes or significant changes that would have to be made to accommodate that bike. Now, it was also noted that because CF Moto is currently making that 790 engine, that they will be making the 690 engine, and the new platform for 690, whether it be Duke or any other bikes, will be coming out of China. It'll be CF Moto making those. Now, Pierre in the interview didn't explicitly say that that engine, the 690, would end up in the adventure platform. The authors of these articles indicated they believe since there is that engine exists in its 690 platform for the Duke, that it is likely to go into an adventure platform. Now, I have done some additional research that has indicated to me that it's very likely to see that engine in an adventure platform. We'll get into those details just a little bit later. Now, I want to address the proverbial elephant in the room, and that has to do with a video I released 3 to 4 weeks ago where I said the 490 Adventure would be out fall 2023. Now, that was speculative based on some of the things that I was seeing, knowing that KTM had interest in building that bike and knowing what their position was and what was happening with CF Moto, and then not being able to see things. So there was really 3 points for that video, and one was the 490 engine, which now that's Pierre did confirm that that is scrapped, and I have some additional information I'll cover a little bit later on why that happened. And then also the other point was that CF Moto is going to be making this new bike, which based on this interview with Pierre, it is confirmed that this new platform, new engine, now a 690, will be a CF Moto based engine. So I wasn't wrong in that point. And then also the other point I was making was we're not going to hear news or see news on whatever new bikes or platforms or whatever KTM is doing if it is done in China. It's a very closed environment. It's very difficult to get information out of there. You're not going to see the spy shots that we have seen like in India or Austria or any of these other places where bikes are being built. It just isn't the access to that type of information. So I was wrong on engine size, but I wasn't wrong that they were coming out with something new and it would be built in China. So with that being said, some additional research that I did, I found KTM's 2022 expert report for shareholders, and there were some nuggets of information that I wanted to share with you that goes in line with what happened to the 490 engine based on this expert's report, or how you can extrapolate what's in that report to this new 690 engine likely ending up in the adventure. So let's get to some details of the expert's shareholders report. In the interview, Pierre talked about how the 490 was going to be shelved. The costs were just too much. And a lot of that is because of COVID. The shareholders report talks about how they had projected earnings from 2017, 18, 19, and then into 20. And each year their actual sales and income exceeded what their projections were. So in 2020, they were expecting growth from 2019. And when COVID hit, it put them and put everybody in a very difficult position to be able to continue business because things were shut down. And the biggest area that was impacted by KTM was the R&D funds. So those funds, in order to keep everything else running, were essentially shut down. And that was in this report. Now, quick note about this report, it's all in German. I had to spend quite a bit of time doing some machine translation, trying to pull out the pieces that looked important. I don't speak German at all. And so it took me a long time to get through to those pieces. So as I go through this, I will show you bits of that report and some of the translation as well. Back to the shareholders report, one of the things that they highlighted is the cost of production in India and China is significantly lower than doing it in Austria. I think we all know that, but it was highlighted in this report. And there's that increase joint venture that has gone on with Baja and also with CF Moto. Now, one of the reports that I found showed that KTM is reducing their joint venture they have with Baja by purchasing company shares back from Baja. It was a forced purchase of those shares to reduce their joint venture. So I think the 390, the 250, the 125, those bikes will continue to be made in India. But what was speculated to be the 490, that's being pulled back, that's shelved, and now this 690 is going to China. So the footprint that KTM is going to have in India is going to stay what it is. It's not going to grow, but the footprint in China is definitely going to grow. Now back to scrapping of the 490 and how I think what would have been the 490 adventure will become a 690 adventure. And reading through that shareholders report, there's some very specific language that's used in that report that makes me think that this lower horsepower engine will be put in an adventure bike. Now, hopefully the 690 adventure will be closer to that unicorn bike that we're all hoping for. I think we can speculate what the weight of that bike will be based on what the 790, 890 are. I don't know that this CC reduction is going to make that much of a difference in weight, but we'll have to wait and see. It'll definitely be a better use of power. Now, I'm going to actually read something that came out of that report that I think is very important for you to understand, and I will show you where that came from. In the shareholders report, it clearly stated that lower horsepower motorcycles provide a better riding experience, increased safety, and there is growing interest. So let me say that again. In the shareholders report, it said, lower horsepower motorcycles provide a better riding experience, increased safety, and there is growing interest. So let that sink in for a second. So with that being said, and that coming straight from the shareholders report, that's why I think that 690 engine being lower horsepower and the recognition that lower horsepower motorcycles are becoming in more favor, which also gets us to the point that KTM in the shareholders report also looked at how they measured in the global market for motorcycles, and more specifically, how they lined up with Japanese motorcycles with Honda, Yamaha, and Kawasaki. And you can see from this chart, they consider themselves to be placed in the 4th position. But with the success that Yamaha has had with the T7, that being around a 70 horsepower bike, I would not be surprised if KTM tries to bring something out in direct competition with that bike. Also with Honda getting ready to come out with the Trans Alp, which we should see maybe mid-year, end of year, hit showroom floors, that is also a smaller, lighter weight, mid-size, less expensive adventure bike. They're gonna wanna try to tuck a bike into that area. I don't think the current 890 Adventure and 890 Adventure are really fit there, because if you look at those price points, they're 13, 14, 15,000 plus dollars. And now with this new add-on subscription type of thing, it's pushing the price up even more. So in order to have a bike that fits in that area horsepower wise, I think we'll see a 690 Adventure. Now, I spent hours going through the shareholders report, looking through all the details. I could go on and on about what I found in there for hours. I just don't think anybody actually wants to sit and listen to me talk about the shareholders meeting and show you machine translation of what I dug out of there. But really the bottom line is, from the interview of KTM CEO, they're building a 690 parallel twin engine that'll be built in China by CF Moto, and KTM recognizes the need for lower horsepower engines because of that riding experience and the interest that's picking up in that area. If you merge those two together, I think you can see that the potential for a 690 parallel twin adventure motorcycle is not outside the realms of possibility. So anyway, if you made it to the end, thank you so much. Let me know what you think in the comments below, whether you think this is actually gonna happen with this engine, the 690 engine in an adventure platform, or if you would even consider buying a 690 Adventure. I'm interested to see what you think and whether or not that would be something you would do. And if you would buy a motorcycle built by CF Moto that carries a KTM badge. So leave those in the comments below. I'm sure everyone else will be interested to hear about that as well. I'm gonna continue trying to track some of this news here and there. It's in obscure corners of the internet. It takes a lot of digging. I'm going off of what someone else put, so I will put links to those articles in the description below if you want to go read them yourselves. I think in the next week or two, you're going to see more and more people pick up on this. So again, 690 engine, parallel twin coming out of KTM, being built by CF Moto, which is modified from their current 790 engine. So anyway, get out, do some riding, ride safe, and I will see you out there. Some of the reasons why I am not going to upgrade my KTM 390 Adventure to any other bike, because I am holding out for the 490 Adventure.